My husband was mid-toast when he finally saw me standing in the doorway of his restaurant. The champagne flute froze halfway to his lips. The smile he had been wearing all evening, that wide, practiced smile I had spent 7 years watching him rehearse in the bathroom mirror before every important dinner, vanished so completely it was like someone had cut the power to his face. I had not moved. I did not need to. I simply stood there in my camel wool coat, my leather portfolio tucked under one arm, and let the silence do the work. The restaurant was everything he had described to me over kitchen table conversations and late-night phone calls. Exposed brick walls softened with Edison bulb lighting, hand-poured concrete countertops, an open kitchen where the chef station gleamed under halogen spots. He had even sourced the reclaimed barnwood for the host stand from a farm in Vermont because he said it would tell a story. My husband had always understood the importance of a good story. What he had not understood, apparently, was that I had been listening to his for a very long time. He handed his champagne glass to the woman standing next to him. She was younger than I expected, maybe 26. She wore an emerald slip dress and held herself with the particular confidence of someone who had recently been told, repeatedly, that she was exceptional. When she followed his gaze and found me standing at the entrance, her hand drifted instinctively to his arm. My husband crossed the dining room in about 10 seconds. He moved fast when he was panicking, always had. "What are you doing here?" he said through his teeth, positioning his body between me and his guests like I was a weather event he could physically redirect. His voice was low and controlled, the voice he used when he needed to appear calm. "This is a private event, Callie. You were not invited. I told you that already." I looked past him at the room. I recognized a few faces. His business attorney was near the bar, holding a glass of something amber. 2 men I had seen before in pitch decks and LinkedIn thumbnails stood near the window, the kind of investors who wore fleece vests even to opening night parties. They were watching us now. I also noticed the 3 women near the back corner, each one holding a phone at an angle I recognized immediately. They were not tourists. They were content creators. Local ones, with the kind of follower counts that made PR agencies return emails on Sunday mornings. Their recording lights were barely visible in the warm light, but I could see them. They were live. I did not lower my voice. "I am not here to make a scene," I said clearly. "I am here because I have a legal right to be on this property." He laughed, and it came out thin. "Callie," his voice sharpened, "do not do this. You signed the partnership paperwork. You are a silent investor. That does not give you the right to show up and embarrass me in front of my guests on the most important night of my career." I set my portfolio on the host stand and unzipped it slowly. "You are right that I signed partnership paperwork," I said. "I am glad you remember that, because I brought a copy." I had spent a great deal of time in the 14 months since I had written the first check thinking about this moment. I had imagined it differently at various points. Sometimes I imagined it with more anger. Sometimes I imagined it with more anger. Sometimes I imagined myself crying. What I had not imagined, and what surprised me now, was how quiet I felt. Not numb, quiet. The way you feel after a very long storm finally stops. I had invested $480,000 into the restaurant my husband had been dreaming about since the year we got married. It was not a whim. We had planned it together on a legal pad at our dining room table, talking through the concept, the neighborhood, the menu positioning. He was the visionary. He always said I was the infrastructure. He said it like it was a compliment, and I had believed him for a long time that it was. The money came from the sale of a property my grandmother had left me in her will, a small house in coastal Maine that I had spent summers in as a child, that smelled like cedar and low tide, that I had cried about selling for 3 weeks before I convinced myself it was an investment in our future. I signed the transfer documents on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, my husband had the capital he needed to move forward on the lease. He had been careful, I will give him that. He had kept our finances technically separated in the way that people do when they are planning ahead. The restaurant LLC was in his name. My contribution was documented as a private loan with a conversion clause, meaning if the business hit certain revenue benchmarks within 3 years, my loan would convert to a 35% equity stake. His attorney had drafted it. I had not had my own attorney review it at the time because he was my husband and I trusted him, and I had been very foolish about exactly that kind of thing for a very long time. What he had not counted on when he structured the deal that way was the personal guarantee clause buried on page 11. He had signed a personal guarantee on the restaurant's primary commercial lease. Standard language, his attorney had said. Lenders and commercial landlords require it for new businesses without operating history. My husband had signed without negotiating the terms because he was in a hurry to secure the space, and he trusted the landlord because the landlord had been referred by someone he knew through a mutual friend, and he had not read past page 8. The landlord was a subsidiary of a commercial real estate group. The commercial real estate group had a managing partner. The managing partner was my college roommate's husband, who had taken my call in September, listened carefully to what I needed, and spent 6 weeks helping me purchase a controlling interest in the specific property entity that held my husband's lease. I owned the building my husband was standing in. He did not know this yet. He found out the same way he found out most things lately, which was later than he should have, and in front of people. "Callie," he said, and his voice had dropped into something that was trying to be threatening and landing somewhere closer to desperate. "Whatever you think you are doing, stop. I will have you removed." 2 people stepped up beside me. They were not friends of mine. They were process servers from a firm my attorney had retained, both in plain clothes, both holding manila envelopes. The taller one handed my husband a document with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this many times and was entirely unmoved by the ambient candlelight. My husband stared at the envelope. "What is this?" he said. "That is a notice of commercial lease default," I said. "You are 4 months behind on rent. The personal guarantee you signed makes you individually liable for the full outstanding balance. Tonight that balance is $62,000. That is the default. There is more." He looked up at me. I watched him cycle through several expressions very quickly. Confusion, then a flash of something that looked like calculation, then something that was starting to look very much like fear. The investor types near the window had stopped talking to each other. One of them had his phone out. The content creators in the back corner had shifted their angles. I pulled the second document from my portfolio. This one had a red cover sheet, which my attorney had said was not strictly necessary, but I had requested anyway. "When your restaurant took out its initial equipment financing," I said, "you listed the primary business address and the lease term as collateral representations to the lender. The lender's underwriter relied on those representations to approve the loan. Last month, my team's forensic accountants determined that you had altered 2 figures in the lease document submitted to the lender. The square footage listed was inflated by 12%. The lease term listed was 4 years longer than the actual remaining term at the time of submission." My husband's mouth opened. "That is called commercial fraud," I said. "In Texas, it is a 3rd-degree felony." He turned to his business attorney at the bar. His attorney was already setting down his glass. "This is my wife," my husband said loudly, gesturing at me with an open hand. "She is angry about our separation, and she is manufacturing a legal crisis to sabotage my business. This is a domestic dispute dressed up in paperwork. Do not let her ruin this night." I watched the 2 investors near the window exchange a look. One of them reached for his coat. My husband saw it too. He crossed to them fast, putting himself in their path. "Gentlemen," he said. He was using his warmest register now, the one he used on vendors and journalists and anyone he needed to believe in him. "I want you to hear this directly from me. My wife has been struggling since we separated. She has made poor decisions. She hired some people to come here tonight and stage a scene because she wants leverage in our divorce proceeding. The business is completely sound. The numbers I showed you last week are accurate. Our opening reservation list is full through March. Whatever she is claiming has nothing to do with the restaurant's viability." The taller investor looked at my husband for a long moment. "You have a fraud allegation in front of witnesses and a camera," he said flatly. "We will be in touch." They left. Both of them. Through the front door without their coats fully buttoned, the way people leave when they are trying to move quickly but do not want to appear to be running. My husband stood very still in the middle of his restaurant. The woman in the emerald dress had not moved from her position near the bar. I had been aware of her this entire time, the way you are aware of a bruise you are not pressing on yet. She was watching him, and the expression on her face was not the one I would have expected. It was not grief. It was not loyalty. I've thought a lot about the moment he handed me that champagne glass at our kitchen table and said, "You are the infrastructure." He meant it as a compliment. I know that now in a way. I did not know it then. He meant that I was load-bearing, that without me, the thing he was building would not stand. What he did not understand, and what took me a long time to understand myself, is that infrastructure does not disappear when you stop acknowledging it. It just waits. What happened to my husband was not fate handing down a verdict. It was simple arithmetic. Every decision he made had a cost attached to it, and he had been choosing not to read the bill. He forged representations to a lender. He excluded the person who funded him from the thing she funded. He told a woman in Denver that he owned a building he did not own, and he told himself that the gap between what he said and what was true was not a gap at all, just strategy. None of those choices reversed themselves. They compounded quietly, the way financial errors always do, until one evening in October they collected all at once in a dining room full of witnesses. I do not think the world punishes dishonesty out of some cosmic principle. I think dishonesty is structurally unstable. You can build on it for a while. Some people build on it for years, but it requires constant maintenance, constant story management, and eventually the maintenance cost exceeds what you are able to pay. My husband ran out of story before he ran out of ambition. That is where it fell apart. The thing I had to learn, the thing I am still learning, honestly, is that integrity is not just a moral position. It is a practical one. I kept every receipt. I retained copies of every wire transfer, every signed document, every email where he outlined the terms of our arrangement. I did not do that because I suspected him. I did that because I had been raised by a woman who said that love and carelessness are not the same thing, and that trusting someone does not mean you stop paying attention. That habit, that quiet, unromantic habit of documentation, was what made everything else possible. Goodness without clarity is just hope, and hope alone does not hold up in civil court. What I am most proud of is not the eviction or the restructuring or the quarterly numbers that came in strong last May. What I am most proud of is that I did not stop. After he told me the opening was business partners only, I could have accepted that. I could have wired the overdue rent payment and told myself it was easier. There is a version of me that does exactly that for another 2 years. But I had already spent a long time making myself smaller to fit into spaces he was defining for me, and at some point the cost of that became higher than the cost of the alternative. I chose the alternative. It was not graceful. It was not without fear, but I chose it, and I kept choosing it, one document at a time, until the choosing added up to something I could stand inside of and call mine. The restaurant is full on Friday nights now. My general manager makes decisions I would not have thought to make, and they are usually better than mine would have been. I am learning still what it means to build something honestly with people who read the same contract you read, who know what they are getting into and choose it anyway. That is the only foundation I trust anymore.